Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We are really glad you're here with us today because we are about to tackle a text that, quite honestly, feels less like a chapter of ancient literature and more like a summer blockbuster movie script, one that just refuses to pick a genre.
That is a very, very apt description. I mean, if you were to walk into a Hollywood studio today and pitch the narrative arc of Matthew chapter 17, they'd probably tell you it's doing too much.
Right.
It's structurally, well, chaotic.
It really is. I mean, think about the visual spectrum we're dealing with here. The pacing is just frantic. We start the episode in what is essentially high fantasy. We are on a literal high mountain. The air is thin. There's this blinding light. Ancient celebrities are appearing from the afterlife. And then you have the voice of God booming out of a glowing cloud.
It's epic in the truest sense of the word.
Absolutely. It is the definition of a spiritual high.
But then
the camera just cuts immediately. And we crash land into this gritty, dusty, chaotic reality show. You've got a screaming child, a frustrated crowd. You have arguments breaking out between religious scholars and disciples, and just total failure.
And it doesn't even stop there.
No. Just when you think you've got a handle on the drama, the scene shifts again to, of all places, a tax booth in Capernaum. And the whole thing ends with a coin found inside a fish's mouth.
It is a bit of a roller coaster. It really does whip the reader back and forth between dimensions almost.
It does.
But that's exactly why we need to unpack this specific chapter. It is so easy to read it as just a random collection of anecdotes. Here's a miracle, here's an argument, here's a fishing trip.
Yeah, a grab bag of stories.
But it's not random. There is a very specific, very tight narrative thread that ties the blinding glory on that mountain peak to that strange little coin in the fish's mouth.
And that is our mission for this deep dive. We really want to find that thread. We want to understand how this chapter serves as a pivot point in the larger story. We're working primarily with the text of Matthew 17 from the Berean Standard Bible, but we've also got a stack of historical notes here on Roman and Jewish taxation, some pretty intense geographical debates about which mountain we're actually talking about, and a lot of Old Testament cross-references.
And we are going to need all of them.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, this is a deep dive into the tension between two realities. We're looking at the connection between the divine identity of Jesus, who he is in the heavenly realms,
Right.
and the gritty, sometimes annoying reality of human failure and practical obligation on the ground.
I really like that framing.
Yeah.
So if we had to boil this down for you, the listener, right at the top, what would you say is the core theme here?
I think it's a study in contrasts. We're looking at glory versus suffering. We're looking at faith versus doubt.
All right.
And perhaps most practically for us today, we're looking at the tension between exemption, having the right to walk away because of who you are, and obligation.
The choice to stay and serve anyway.
Exactly.
That's a powerful setup. So let's not waste any time. Let's put on our hiking boots. We are going to section 1, the high mountain.
Let's do it.
The text opens with a very specific timestamp in verse 1. It says, after 6 days.
Which is an interesting detail right off the bat. Matthew is usually pretty fast-paced. He moves from story to story, but here he pauses. He gives us a calendar mark, after 6 days.
And does that connect to anything specific?
Yeah.
Or is it just sort of a diary entry?
Oh, it's definitely more than a diary entry. After 6 days links us right back to the previous conversation they had in Matthew 16.
The one in Caesarea Philippi.
The very one. That was the moment where Peter finally confessed that Jesus is the Christ, and then Jesus immediately started talking about his own death.
Oh, okay.
So this event, this transfiguration, is inextricably linked to that confession and that first prediction of suffering. But there's a deeper literary echo here, too. Well, it subtly mirrors Exodus chapter 24. If you go back to the story of Moses, he goes up to Mount Sinai. And the text there says, the glory of the Lord covered the mountain for 6 days, and then on the 7th day, God called to Moses from within the cloud.
So the original audience, who would have been just steeped in the Torah, they would hear, after 6 days and up a mountain, and immediately their brain would go, wait a minute, this sounds like Moses?
Exactly. The stage is being set for a kind of new Moses moment. And notice who comes along for the trip.
Right. The text says Jesus takes Peter, James, and John, the inner circle.
The 18.
Yeah, and leads them up a high mountain by themselves.
Let's stop on the geography for a second, because this is actually a really fascinating debate.
I've seen pictures of the Holy Land, and I know there are a few mountains to choose from. But tradition usually points to one specific spot, right? Mount Tabor.
Tradition absolutely loves Mount Tabor. If you go on a pilgrimage tour to Israel today, the bus will almost certainly take you to Mount Tabor. There are beautiful churches there commemorating the Transfiguration. It's a lovely spot.
But I'm sensing a but coming.
There is a significant but. We have to look at the geography and the context of the text.
Yeah.
In Matthew 16, the chapter right before this one, the group is in the region of Caesarea Philippi.
Okay.
It's way up in the north, near the border of modern-day Syria and Lebanon.
And Mount Tabor is not there.
Mount Tabor is down in Galilee. It's about 45 miles away. Now, could they have walked 45 miles in 6 days?
Sure, yeah.
Absolutely. But the narrative flow really suggests they're still in that northern region, and towering right over Caesarea Philippi, I mean, it literally looms over it, is Mount Hermon.
And Mount Hermon is a different beast entirely compared to Tabor, isn't it?
Oh, completely different. Tabor is essentially a large, rounded hill. It's about, 1,900 feet high. It stands alone in the valley.
Right.
But Mount Hermon. Hermon is a proper mountain range. The summit is over 9,000 feet high. It's snow-capped for much of the year.
So we are talking about a serious alpine environment, not just a casual hike up a hill.
Exactly. When the text says a high mountain, Mount Hermon fits the description physically much, much better than Tabor.
And the symbolism there is powerful too.
Incredibly, Caesarea Philippi was a center of pagan worship. It was dedicated to the god Pan. For Jesus to take his disciples up the highest peak in that region, overlooking all these pagan shrines to reveal his glory, it makes a statement.
It's like planting a flag. This is my territory.
Precisely.
So imagine the scene. They're hiking up Hermon. The air is getting thinner. It's getting colder. They are totally isolated from the crowds, isolated from the other 9 disciples. And then verse 2 happens. There he was, transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became as white as the light.
We have to pause on that word transfigured. It's one of those, church words we hear and we nod along to, but the Greek is metamorphe.
Which sounds a lot like
Metamorphosis.
metamorphosis, like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly.
In a sense, yes, but it's even more profound. A metamorphosis implies a change in form that reveals the true, essential nature of the thing.
So it's not a costume change.
No, absolutely not. Jesus isn't putting on a glory suit. He's peeling back the veil of his humanity to show what's underneath.
It's an unveiling.
That's the perfect word for it. It's an unveiling. And look at the description of the light. His face shone like the sun. This is a crucial distinction from that Old Testament parallel we talked about earlier. Remember Moses.
Yeah, of course. When Moses came down from Mount Sinai with the 10 Commandments, his face was glowing. He had to wear a veil because he was, freaking people out.
Exactly. But why was Moses glowing? What was the source of his light?
Because he had been in the presence of God. He'd been talking to God.
Right. Moses was reflecting God's glory. He was like the moon reflecting the sun. He had been looking at the light, so his face absorbed and then reflected that radiance.
But Matthew here is very specific. Jesus' face shines like the sun.
So the light isn't coming from an external source, it's coming from him.
Well,
That is a massive theological flex. It's saying he isn't just a prophet who has seen God, he is the source of the light. The glory is intrinsic. It belongs to him.
That is a wild image. I mean, you're on a snowy peak, and suddenly your teacher, the guy you've been walking in the dust with for years, just goes supernova. And then, as if that visual isn't enough, we get the guest stars, verse 3. Suddenly, Moses and Elijah appeared before them, talking with Jesus.
The VIP section has officially opened up.
But why these 2 guys? I mean, I get that they're big deals, but why not Abraham, the father of the nation? Why not David, the great king? Why Moses and Elijah specifically?
It's all about what they represent. Together, they are the 2 pillars of the Jewish faith for that time. Moses represents the law.
The Korah.
Right. He's the one who climbed Sinai, brought down the Torah. He's the foundation of the covenant.
Then Elijah.
Elijah represents the prophets. He was the great defender of monotheism in a time of rampant idolatry. He's the one who called down fire from heaven. But more than that, he's the representative of the prophetic hope for the future.
So by having them standing there, talking with Jesus, it's like a visual stamp of approval from the whole Old Testament.
It's visual shorthand for the law and the prophets testify to this man. It affirms that Jesus isn't scrapping the old playbook. He isn't some heretic destroying the faith of Israel.
He's the fulfillment.
He's the fulfillment of everything Moses wrote and everything Elijah fought for.
And there's something else about them too, isn't there? Didn't both of them have sort of strange endings to their lives?
They did, and that's a really keen observation. Moses died on Mount Nebo, but the Bible says no one ever found his grave, that God buried him.
Right.
And Elijah didn't die at all. He was taken up to heaven in a chariot of fire and a whirlwind. So you have these two figures who had these mysterious exits from the earth.
And now they're back.
They're back, and Luke's gospel tells us they were discussing Jesus' departure, or exodus, that he was about to accomplish in Jerusalem.
It's a moment of perfect symmetry. But then we have Peter.
Good old Peter.
I feel like every time the narrative gets too holy or too heavy, Peter's there to say something incredibly human and honestly just slightly awkward.
Yeah.
Verse 4. Peter said to Jesus, "Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, I will put up 3 shelters, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah."
You have to sympathize with him, though. The parallel accounts in Mark and Luke say that they were terrified. He's completely overwhelmed, and Peter is a man of action.
He is.
He's an extrovert. When he encounters a silence or a situation he doesn't understand, his brain immediately goes to, what can I do?
I'll build a tent. It's like he's trying to be the event coordinator for the Transfiguration. Let me get you guys some shade, maybe some water.
It does sound funny to us, but there is actually a deeper layer to that shelters or tabernacles comment. It might be a reference to the Feast of Tabernacles or Sukkot.
Can you break down Sukkot for us? What's the significance there?
So Sukkot was a festival where Israelites lived in temporary shelters to remember their journey in the wilderness. But in Jewish eschatology, the study of the end times, there was an expectation that in the Messianic age, God would dwell, or tabernacle, with his people again, permanently.
Oh, so Peter sees Jesus glowing, he sees Moses and Elijah, and he thinks, this is it. The kingdom is starting right now. The end times are here on this mountain.
Exactly. He's thinking, let's set up camp. Let's inaugurate the Messianic age right here on Mount Hermon. He wants to seize the moment.
He wants to capture the glory and put it in a box,
Well,
literally.
Precisely. It's that very human desire to stay on the mountaintop. It is good for us to be here. He doesn't want to go back down to the valley, to the problems of the world. He wants to institutionalize this incredible experience.
But God doesn't even let him finish his sentence, does he? Verse 5 says, while Peter was still speaking, a bright cloud enveloped them.
This is the Shekinah glory. In the Old Testament, a bright cloud was the unmistakable sign of God's immediate presence. It filled the temple when Solomon dedicated it. It led the Israelites through the wilderness. And now it just envelops them on the mountain.
It cuts Peter off mid-sentence.
It does, and then the voice speaks from the cloud.
This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Listen to him.
And notice the shift from the baptism. At the baptism of Jesus, the voice said something very similar. This is my beloved Son. But here, God adds a direct command.
Listen to him.
Listen to him. It feels like a direct rebuke to Peter. Like, stop talking about building tents, Peter. Stop trying to put Jesus on the same level as Moses and Elijah by building them equal shelters.
Just shut up and listen.
That is exactly the implication. Moses and Elijah are honored servants in God's house, but Jesus is the Son, and when the Son speaks, the servants fade into the background. And that's quite literal in the text.
Right, because after the voice speaks, the disciples just hit the dirt.
Verse 6, when the disciples heard this, they fell face down and were terrified. Which, by the way, is the only appropriate reaction to hearing the audible voice of God. It's not a warm, fuzzy feeling. It's ontological shock. Your whole being just trembles.
But then we get this beautiful, gentle moment, verse 7. But Jesus came and touched them. Get up, he said. Do not be afraid.
I love that detail. He touches them. It's such a grounding human gesture. He doesn't just shout from a distance or float above them. He reaches down into their terror.
And when they finally look up, verse 8 says, they saw no one except Jesus. Moses is gone. Elijah is gone. The cloud is gone. The spectacular special effects are over.
And they are left with just Jesus.
Which is the whole point.
It's a whole point. The law and the prophets point to him, and then they step aside. He is sufficient. If you have Jesus, you have everything Moses and Elijah were talking about, and more.
So the show is over. They have to leave the theater. And now, they have to do the one thing Peter didn't want to do.
They have to walk down the mountain.
Which brings us to section 2. The descent and the secret. And this is where the narrative really starts to pivot from glory to confusion.
It's a big pivot.
On the way down, in verse 9, Jesus gives them a command that has baffled people for centuries. He says, Do not tell anyone about this vision until the Son of Man has been raised from the dead.
This is a classic example of what scholars call the messianic secret.
Which just seems totally counterintuitive. If you're launching a movement and you have undeniable proof that you are the Son of God, I mean, you are literally glowing, wouldn't you want to leak that footage?
Yeah.
That's the best PR imaginable.
It is great PR if you want to be a military conqueror. And that was precisely the problem. We have to remember the context of the first century.
Right.
The Jewish expectation of the Messiah at this time was heavily political. They were under Roman occupation. They were paying heavy taxes. They wanted a king. They wanted a general who would kick out the Romans and restore Israel's national sovereignty.
They wanted a superhero.
Exactly. So if news gets out that Jesus is glowing with divine glory and hanging out with Moses and Elijah, the crowds might try to force him onto a throne. They would try to make him a king on their terms before he can get to the cross.
So the secret is actually a protection mechanism for the mission. It's to keep the narrative on track.
Yes. The glory without the suffering is a false picture of who he is and what he came to do. The disciples needed to see the crucifixion and the resurrection to understand what kind of glory they had just witnessed on the mountain.
It wasn't the glory of a Caesar.
No, it was the glory of a suffering servant. They are two very different things.
That makes sense. But speaking of things that didn't make sense to the disciples, on the hike down, they start arguing about timelines. They ask him, why do the scribes say that Elijah must come first?
They're thinking about that prophecy in Malachi 4.5. It's the very last chapter of the Old Testament. And it says, "See, I will send the prophet Elijah to you before that great and dreadful day of the Lord comes."
So their logic is, okay, we just saw Elijah on the mountain, but he left. He didn't stay to start the revolution. So did we miss it? Is the prophecy broken? What's going on?
Right. They are completely confused about the sequence of events. And Jesus confirms that the prophecy is true. He says, to be sure, Elijah comes and will restore all things.
But then he adds a twist.
He adds a huge twist. But I tell you, Elijah has already come, and they did not recognize him, but have done to him everything they wished.
And then the light bulb finally goes on for the disciples. Verse 13. Then the disciples understood that he was talking to them about John the Baptist.
And this is a key lesson in how biblical prophecy often works. It's not always a one-to-one literal fulfillment. John the Baptist wasn't Elijah reincarnated.
Right.
But he came in the spirit and power of Elijah. He wore the camel hair, he ate the locusts and wild honey, he preached repentance in the wilderness. He fulfilled the function of Elijah.
But instead of restoring everything to some golden age, John was arrested and beheaded by Herod.
Which is a very dark foreshadowing. Jesus is saying, just as they treated the forerunner, the one who prepared the way, so they will treat the Son of Man. The path isn't a parade to a throne, it's a path of suffering.
If the new Elijah was killed, the new Moses will be too.
That's the heavy realization they have to carry down the mountain with them.
And that heaviness turns into absolute chaos the moment their feet hit level ground. We are entering section 3. The Valley of Chaos.
The contrast here is so intentional and so jarring. We go from the serenity, the order, and the worship of the mountaintop directly into a chaotic, noisy, desperate crowd in the valley.
It really is a slap in the face with reality. A man runs up to Jesus, falls on his knees, and says, "Lord, have mercy on my son. He has seizures and is suffering terribly. He often falls into the fire or into the water."
The Greek text here describes the boy as moonstruck or lunatic, which was the ancient term for epilepsy, but the context makes it clear there's a spiritual element as well. A demon is driving this boy to self-destruction.
It's a horrifying picture. And the father then drops a complaint that must have just stung the 9 disciples who were left behind. He says, "I brought him to your disciples, but they could not heal him."
Imagine being one of those 9 disciples. You didn't get to go up the mountain, so you're already probably feeling a little left out.
Yeah, bit of FOMO.
For sure. And now you're surrounded by religious scribes. Mark's gospel tells us the scribes were arguing with them in a big crowd, and you're trying to perform an exorcism, and nothing is happening.
They look incompetent.
They're powerless. And you have to remember, back in Matthew chapter 10, Jesus explicitly gave them authority to cast out demons. They'd done this before. They had been on successful mission trips. But here, for some reason, they hit a wall.
And Jesus' reaction to this failure is, well, surprisingly spicy. He says, "Oh, unbelieving and perverse generation, how long must I remain with you? How long must I put up with you?"
You can really hear the anguish in his voice. It's almost a lament. He has just come from the perfect communion of the Trinity on Mount Hermon, where the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit in the cloud were in perfect sync.
And he returns to this.
He returns to a world defined by brokenness, argument, and a crippling lack of faith. It's the pain of the gap between heaven and earth.
It's like a master surgeon walking into a dirty, chaotic field hospital where everyone is using the instruments wrong.
That's a good analogy. But notice, he doesn't just throw up his hands and walk away. He says, "Bring the boy here to me."
And in one moment, he rebukes the demon, and the boy is healed instantly. He succeeds exactly where the disciples failed.
He is the ultimate healer. The power is with him.
Afterwards, the disciples pull him aside for a private debrief. You can just picture it. It's like the locker room post-game analysis. "Coach, why couldn't we make that play? What went wrong?"
And Jesus gives it to them straight. No sugarcoating. Because you have so little faith.
Ouch. That is direct.
It is. But then he gives them one of the most famous encouragements in the entire Bible, the mustard seed analogy.
Right. Truly, I tell you, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, "Move from here to there," and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for it.
Right? When he says this mountain, it is very likely he's gesturing back up at Mount Hermon.
That massive 9,000-foot snow-capped peak they just descended.
Yes, he's saying, you see that massive thing? That thing that seems permanent and unmovable? Faith can move it.
But the phrase "moving mountains" was also a common idiom at the time, right? It wasn't always literal.
It was, yes. In Jewish culture, a mountain mover was a great rabbi who could solve incredible difficulties or explain the most difficult passages of Scripture, so it was a metaphor for doing the impossible.
The key here seems to be the nature of the faith, not the size of it. He doesn't say, "if you have a mountain of faith." He says, "mustard seed faith."
Exactly. It's not about the volume of your faith. It's about the object of your faith and its vitality. A mustard seed is tiny, but it's alive. It has the potential for growth within it.
So it's about genuine, living trust.
It is. The disciples likely treated the exorcism like a magic trick. They were trying to use Jesus' name as a formula, a magic word, without actually being connected in dependence and trust to God. They were disconnected from the source of the power.
So if your faith is connected to the right source, even a tiny bit is enough to do the impossible.
That's the lesson. True faith is dependent trust. It's a conduit for God's power, not a power you possess in yourself.
So we've had the glory on the mountain, the failure in the valley, and now the shadow begins to lengthen again. We move to section 4, the shadow of death.
They're gathering in Galilee now, they're moving south, and Jesus just drops the bomb again, verses 22 and 23.
He says, "The Son of Man is about to be delivered into the hands of men. They will kill him, and on the third day he will be raised to life."
And this is the second time he said this so explicitly. The text says the disciples were deeply grieved.
This is a crucial emotional beat. They hear the words "delivered" and "killed." That registers. That matches their worst fears, that the authorities in Jerusalem are out to get him. But they seem to be completely deaf to the last part. Raised to life. They just seem to gloss right over it.
They do.
Why is that? Why do they keep missing the resurrection promise? I mean, it's the happy ending.
Because they have absolutely no category for it. In their worldview, resurrection happens at the very end of time for everyone when God restores the whole world.
Okay, a general resurrection.
Right. The idea of the Messiah dying, which was already a shocking concept, and then rising alone in the middle of history while Rome is still in charge and the world is still broken, it just didn't make sense. It was theological gibberish to them.
So they fixate on the tragedy and they completely miss the victory.
Exactly, and it creates this incredible narrative tension. The glory of the Transfiguration is heading toward a tragic, violent death, and they have no idea how to resolve that contradiction in their minds.
And speaking of resolving things, we arrive at our final section. Section 5, the coin in the fish's mouth.
This is one of the strangest and most wonderfully specific miracles in all the Gospels.
It really is. So the scene is Capernaum. This is their home base on the Sea of Galilee. They arrive, and the tax collectors come up to Peter. They ask, "Does your teacher pay the 2 drachmas?"
Okay, now we need to clarify this tax because it's really easy to misunderstand this. Is this the Roman tax? Is this money going to Caesar?
I would assume so. I mean, everyone hated the Roman taxes. That's a huge theme.
Actually, no, and that is a critical distinction for understanding the story. This is the temple tax. Based on a command in Exodus chapter 30, every Jewish male over the age of 20 had to pay a half shekel annually for the upkeep of the temple in Jerusalem.
So it was a religious obligation.
It was, not a civil one imposed by Rome. This tax paid for the daily sacrifices, the incense, the curtains, the general maintenance of God's house.
Okay, so it's basically mandatory church dues.
That's a perfect modern analogy for it. And the collectors ask Peter, very publicly, if Jesus pays it.
And Peter, being Peter, immediately answers yes.
He answers too fast. He doesn't check. He probably just wants to protect Jesus' reputation. The last thing he wants is for Jesus to look like a rule breaker or someone who doesn't care about the temple.
So he commits Jesus to the payment.
He does, and then he walks into the house probably to find Jesus and say, hey, we need some money for the tax guys. But Jesus beats him to the punch.
Jesus displays this supernatural knowledge again. He knows exactly what happened outside. And he asks Peter a question about, of all things, politics.
He says, what do you think, Simon? From whom do the kings of the earth collect customs and taxes? From their own sons or from others?
And Peter gives the obvious answer, from others. Because obviously the king's son doesn't pay tax to the king. The royal family is exempt. If you're the prince, you don't pay for the upkeep of the palace.
And Jesus drives the point home with one simple line. Then the sons are exempt.
Whoa, let's just unpack the logic here for a second. The temple is God's house.
Correct.
Jesus is God's son. I mean, we literally just established that on the mountain with the glowing face and the voice from the cloud.
Correct.
Therefore, Jesus shouldn't have to pay rent to his own father.
Exactly. He is asserting his deity again, but in this very quiet, private, practical way to Peter. He is Lord over the temple. He is greater than the temple. He is not a subject. He is the son. Technically, he owes nothing.
But then comes the twist. After claiming the exemption, he waives it, verse 7, but so that we may not offend them.
And this is the profound lesson on Christian freedom and humility. Jesus has the right not to pay. He has the theological high ground. But he knows that if he refuses, it will cause a scandal. It will become a stumbling block.
People will get distracted.
They'll get distracted by a tax dispute and miss the entire message of the kingdom. They'll say, he doesn't care about the temple or the law of Moses, so he makes a choice.
He chooses to limit his freedom for the sake of love and witness.
He submits to an obligation he doesn't actually owe just to keep the peace and focus on the real mission. That's a sign of immense maturity and humility.
It's the same humility that will lead him to the cross.
It is. He didn't owe a debt to sin either, but he chose to pay it for us.
And the way he pays this tax, I mean, this is just the grand finale. This is incredible. He tells Peter, go to the sea, cast a hook, and take the first fish you catch.
And note the detail, cast a hook. Peter was a net fisherman. Commercial fishing involves nets. You catch a bunch of fish at once. Casting a single hook is for catching one specific fish. It implies a precision operation.
A targeted mission. When you open its mouth, you will find a 4-drachma coin. Take it and give it to them for my tax and yours.
The coin mentioned in the Greek is a stater. A stater was a silver coin that was worth exactly 4 drachmas.
And the tax was 2 drachmas per person.
So one coin pays the tax exactly for Jesus, 2 drachmas, and for Peter, 2 drachmas.
This is just mind-blowing. Think about the logistics of this miracle. First, someone had to lose that specific coin in the Sea of Galilee, had to sink to the bottom. A specific fish had to see it, mistake it for food, or maybe be attracted to the shine, and somehow get it in its mouth. That fish then had to swim around with a coin in its mouth without spitting it out or swallowing it.
And it had to swim to the specific spot on the shore where Peter was about to throw his hook at the exact moment Peter threw it.
And Peter had to catch that one specific fish out of the millions in the lake.
It highlights the absolute sovereignty of Jesus over creation. Even the chaotic sea and the random movements of wildlife obey his will.
It creates such a beautiful bookend to the chapter, doesn't it?
It really does. We started with Jesus showing his glory as the Son of God on the mountain. It was cosmic, there's light, voices, prophets from the past.
The big stuff.
The big, spectacular stuff. And we end with Jesus showing his glory as the Son of God over the mundane world over. A fish, a coin, and a tax collector.
And it also solves the problem of the tax. He pays the earthly obligation using divine provision. He meets the mundane requirement with a miracle.
And notice, he pays for Peter too. For me and for you.
I love that. He covers the debt of the disciple who just a few hours before was told he had little faith. The disciple who failed in the valley, who spoke too soon. It's a grace that provides for both of them.
It is. It's a quiet miracle, done just for Peter, really, to show him, I am the Son. I am exempt. But I will always provide what is needed for us to walk in this world without causing unnecessary offense.
So let's bring this all together. We've been up the mountain and down to the sea. We've seen Jesus glowing like the sun, and we've seen him dealing with petty tax codes. What is the thread that ties all of this together?
I think the thread is the definition of sonship. What does it mean for Jesus to be the Son of God?
Okay, break that down for us.
On the mountain, the Father declares, "This is my beloved Son." That's the declaration of his identity and glory.
Right.
In the valley, Jesus acts as the Son who has all authority over demons and sickness, but who is also deeply grieved by the brokenness and faithlessness of the world he came to save.
Okay.
And then in Capernaum, at the tax booth, he is the Son who is free from the obligations that bind the servants, but who voluntarily submits to them in order to serve others.
So being the Son means having all the power, but choosing to use it to serve.
Yeah.
It means having all the glory, but willingly accepting the path of suffering.
Exactly. And for you, the listener, the ultimate takeaway is in that command that boomed from the cloud. Listen to him.
That's the anchor point for the whole chapter.
It is. Whether you're on a spiritual high on the mountaintop and you're tempted to just build a tent and stay there forever, listen to him. Whether you are down in the valley of chaos with a problem that just won't go away and you feel powerless and faithless, listen to him. Or whether you are just dealing with the mundane, annoying obligations of life like taxes and bills and difficult people, listen to him. His word is the guide through all of it.
That is a fantastic summary. And that leads us to our final provocative thought for you to chew on as we wrap up this deep dive.
We talked about how the disciples were terrified. I mean, they literally fell on their faces in fear when they saw the glory of God on the mountain. But they were deeply grieved and confused when they heard about the suffering of God on the road to Galilee.
Which raises the question, why is it often so much harder for us to accept God's plan when it involves pain than when it involves power?
We all want the mountaintop. We want the glow, the big show. But redemption happens in the valley, it happens on the cross, and sometimes faith looks less like a light show and more like a coin in a fish's mouth. Unexpected provision in the most mundane, unexpected places of life.
Something to think about. That's it for this deep dive into Matthew 17. We'll see you next time.